us, it can happen to other people as well. And that's why we want to bring light to the subject and bring, the truth of what actually happened out.
When it broke down, it was violent. Flashbangs, grenades being tossed into the crowd, blowing up on people's shoulder. An old man watched it blow up on his right shoulder, tore up his face.
On January 18th, 2021, they kicked in my door, flashbanged my house. I drove back down and turned myself in that day.
But on March 10th, you were given an arrest and a search warrant for a domestic terrorist.
You know, the worst things that can happen in the United States are two things. Number one, hey everyone, welcome to another Sit Down with Michael Franzese. Hope everybody is doing well. All is very good, very blessed on this end. And as always, my friends, I give all the praise, honor, glory, and thanksgiving to our God for that. Just a few days ago, two men reached out to me, and both of them received pardons for the January 6th event. They received those pardons on Inauguration Day. Donald Trump pardoned 1,500 of those people that were convicted and sentenced for some type of a crime because of the January 6th event. And they reached out and they said, Michael, we want to tell our story and we'd like to do it on your platform. I said, sure, I want to hear about it. Now, I haven't spoken to them. I had my team vet them a little bit to make sure that, they were who they said they were. We've done all of that. So I'm going to speak to them for the first time tonight. Let me give you a little background on January 6th so you understand. For those of you that may not be that up with it, let me tell you what happened again. I mean, I'm sure you know what happened, but let me give you a little bit of the results. As of May 2024, of the 1,424 people that were charged with federal crimes relating to the January 6th event, 1,010 pled guilty and 1,060 have been sentenced. 64% of them received a jail sentence. Some participants in the attack were linked to the far-right extremist groups or conspiratorial movements, including the Oath Keepers, the Proud Boys, and Three Percenters, none of whom I endorse. I don't endorse any of those extremist groups. Some of them were convicted of seditious conspiracy. Enrique Tarrio, who was the chairman of the Proud Boys at that time, he received the longest sentence, a 22-year prison term. And when Trump did the pardons, he pardoned all of them except for members of the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers, whose sentences he commuted. So he didn't give them all pardons, he commuted some of those sentences. Now, I don't want to get into all of the politics of January 6th. Many of you, I'm sure, have been following this. You know that there's a lot of talk on both sides. We know what happened. I don't want to get into all of that. What I really want to hear is what happened that night. Now, these two people were there. They ended up either pleading guilty or convicted of something. I don't know what the crime was exactly. We're going to find out. And both of these men were sentenced to prison. Both of them walked out on the Monday that they were pardoned. So we're going to hear what they have to say. Now, I want to tell you this. When this happened, this January 6th thing happened, I was suspicious, honestly, but I didn't make up my mind. I said, wow, did Trump really cause this? Is this what happened? Is anything that he said or did it cause them to storm the Capitol building? Not right. We don't want to see that happen. We don't want to see any riots happen anywhere. I didn't want to see the riots after George Floyd. And it's amazing to me that all these politicians that were so outraged at what happened at the Capitol building, they were silent when it came to the George Floyd riots where people were killed, businesses were burnt down, the press, they underplayed everything at the time, but this Capitol event was huge because it was them that were being allegedly attacked. I don't know. We'll see. Who knows the real thing right now? Hopefully we'll find out. But we're going to talk to them. But I have to tell you this, and I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. After the last 4 years of the Biden-Harris administration, I don't put anything past these people. Sorry, people, that's just my feeling. They have lied to us. They have gaslighted us. They have done everything seditious and suspicious under the sun. They haven't been honest. I don't trust them one bit. So is it possible that they dummied up this whole January 6th investigation? I would have to say yes. Why not? Look what they've done over the past 4 years. Look at the border. Look at everything that they've done over the past 4 years. Look at all of the lies. Look at all of the underhandedness. Now, I will tell you this. In this past election, November 5th, I said Lara Trump had the biggest job of everybody. She was in charge of the RNC. She had to make sure that there was no fraud at the voting booths. She had to. And you know what? They were prepared for it this time. They really were. But again, if it happened back then, and if there was some skullduggery, and if there was some cheating with all the mail-in ballots that, COVID caused to happen, we didn't want it to happen again. And they were prepared for it this time. So if that did happen, I understand why Trump was upset. I get it. But that doesn't mean you cause a riot. It's never right. You don't cause a riot. Peaceful protest, yes. Riots, no. So I was like, I don't know. And then I kind of listened and I heard some things. I still haven't made up my mind. I said, I don't know. I don't think Trump caused it, but who knows? So I'm going to ask these people, these two men, very pointed questions to see what they knew, what the atmosphere was like. Were they prepared in any way for something possibly to go wrong? Were they told something was going wrong? Was anything in Trump's speech indicating to them that they should storm the Capitol? I don't know. We'll ask them and we'll see what they say. And again, I don't know these people. So we vetted them. They are who they are. No question about it. From what I understand, there's press on both of them. So after you hear them speak, we can do some research on it and we'll make up our minds at that point. So without any further delay, here are my two guests, two men that were pardoned by Donald Trump for the January 6th events. Here we go. Well, Chris and Ryan, first, let me thank you for both coming on. I appreciate it very much. I know you have a lot to share about the whole January 6th experience. So what I'd like to do is just hear from the both of you, and maybe we can do this one at a time. And if you want to chime in together, whatever. First of all, do you know each other?
Yes, we do.
You do? Okay. Yeah, and what I'm more interested in, good, okay. I think what my viewers are really going to be interested in is the entire experience. I think the politics, has been done. People know it. They're on one side or the other on that issue. But really the experience that you both had, starting from when you first got there on January 6th. Maybe you can explain to me what the atmosphere was like. I'm sure you were there when President Trump gave his speech, correct?
Yes. I was.
Okay. So why don't you just start with that? Either one of you can start one, then the other, and just tell me what the experience was when you first got there, what the attitude of people was, how you felt about it. You're on.
I mean, I'll start, that day when we showed up that morning, my co-defendant and I, Alex, my lifelong best friend, it was an atmosphere of happiness, of, wanting to hear what President Trump had to say. There was uncertainty in the air, of what, really was going to happen. But, the video that we have showing leading up to President Trump speaking, it was nothing but happy people that wanted to see their president, wanted to hear what he had to say. And nothing else was planned besides that, and that's exactly what we did. We listened to what President Trump said. We listened to what the other speaker said. And then at the end, when it was, everybody started walking down to the Capitol, that's what we did, So the atmosphere leading up to going down to the Capitol was happiness and a little uncertainty about what the future held for America, but overall happiness.
And Chris, why did you believe you were going there in the first place? Was it just to hear a speech? Was there any preconceived idea of what was going to go on that day? Or was it just to be with your president and hear what he had to say?
I think I can speak for the majority of us and say the motivation for going was because President Trump was speaking and the people wanted to hear him and be anything. I mean, if you want to make that a little bolder and some kind of boldness, that particular statement, for anybody to assume or say anything other than that. A lot of us, look, some Christian brothers I've talked to and sisters do this. After the fact, we believe we were sent by God. I mean, there was a lot of scripture and a lot of public praise of God that day. It was an electric atmosphere from 7 a.m. till even through the nonsense that occurred that day. And look, I just hoping the people in this country start listening to people like us now and understand that what we're telling is the truth. And look, some things, ugly things happened that day, but it is not the narrative they sold for 4 years.
My friends, during my time on the street, I met a lot of sophisticated criminals. I met a lot of scammers. As a matter of fact, those of you that know my background, you can probably put me in that category, and you'd be correct. But there's a scam going on now that's really sophisticated, and it's really kind of frightening if you own a home. And did you know that American homeowners nationwide, that's all over the country, they have over $32 trillion in equity. That's a lot of value. That's a big asset. And today, there are sophisticated criminals. They're called cyber criminals, and they're targeting the equity in your house. It's a growing scam. The FBI is calling it house stealing. I never heard of that on the street. I heard of burglary, I heard of break-ins, I never heard of house stealing. But this is what it's all about. And house alarms, doorbell cameras, deadbolts, they don't work against these thieves because they're not after your stuff. They don't care what you have in the house. They're not looking to rob you. They're after your home's equity. And if your title isn't being constantly monitored, these scammers can actually transfer the title of your home into their own name. Yes, they can do that. And they use a simple one-page document that they file at the county clerk's office. And then after they have the title in their name, they go out and take loans against your house. They use your house as collateral for their loans. Of course, they don't pay the loans back. They don't have to. And you know what's even worse? They can even sell the property behind your back. And you don't know any of this is going on until what happens? You get a notice in the mailbox. They start arriving in your mailbox. By then, damage has been done. You're left with a financial and a legal nightmare. And you know what? The banks are not going to help you. They have your house as collateral. They want to collect their money. That's it. And if you sell the property, the people that are buying it from you, you're going to have a headache. It's going to be a legal nightmare. So what do? I'm going to give you the advice. The best way to protect yourself and protect your equity is with triple lock protection from my friend at Home Title Lock. Now, triple lock protection is a 24/7 monitoring of your title. They alert you if there's any changes in the title, and God forbid, if the worst thing happens and something goes down with your house with a loan, or God forbid they try to sell it, they'll restore your services at no out-of-pocket cost to you. How can you beat that? So let me ask you this, when was the last time you checked on your title? If you're like me, the answer is probably never. I don't remember checking on my title. Why would you? Unless you're taking out a loan or you're going to sell a house, you don't do that. And that's exactly what these scammers are counting on. They figure you're not going to look at your title. They have all this time to do all of this work, and you're not even going to know about it. So here's what you got to do. You can protect your home title today and make sure you're not already a victim. You can get a free title history report, a 30-day free trial of triple lock protection today. All you need to do is go to HometitleLock.com and use my promo code MF30, or you can click on the link in the description. Once again, that's HometitleLock.com, promo code MF30. People, you own a house, you got to protect your equity. It's for you, it's for your family. You can't afford to wait. So do that today. And my friends, if I ever gave you an offer you shouldn't refuse, this is one of them. Well, let me ask you this. When President Trump gave his speech, was it an uplifting, encouraging speech?
Yeah, I think it was encouraging, but I think it was a little bit of, you could sense his disappointment, and that was, a lot of people believe what we believe, and I'll stand in public and say that election was stolen.
Well, Chris, let me say this. I want to put it out there. My viewers know this. For me, there was uncertainty at that time, but the behavior of this administration over the past 4 years, talking about the Biden-Harris administration, leads me to mistrust anything and everything that has ever come out of them. So as a result of that, if I wasn't sold on the election being stolen, because we went to bed at night thinking Trump was going to win, we woke up and he lost.
Right.
I just mistrust everything that came from them. So I don't put it past them for stealing the election, especially when they had COVID and they had all these mail-in votes and everything else. So I put it out there. That's my position. And I still feel that way. And unfortunately, they haven't led me to believe anything differently because of their behavior over the past 4 years. But what I really want to drill down, and thank you for what you've said so far, is the attitude, the atmosphere that day. You had no preconceived notion that any kind of violent act was going to occur. Nothing like that was in your head when you both traveled there. And you can both answer, just feel free.
So I'll say with that, and it's also in my court documents as well. I thought there might be counter protesters that day. I thought it was going to be like a lot of Antifa type there. And I thought that there would be some type of counter protest, possibly some violence. But we knew I based that judgment off of what I'd seen happen all across the country that year, that summer, from protesters being stabbed or shot, Trump supporters across the nation, to entire buildings and cities getting burned down and looted all across the nation at protests. So I'm like, if I'm going to go somewhere where I know that there's probably going to be counter protesters based off of what I've seen and based off of what I learned in the Marine Corps, I should probably bring something to protect myself, and so that's why we did think there were going to be counter protesters. We showed up. I had body armor on, a front chest protector on, and so did Alex, my co-defendant, and we did think that there was going to be violence at the Capitol with police officers.
Okay, but right. I want to be clear. You got that feeling because of what you had seen going on in the past, with protesters. It wasn't for any reason that you were prepared that somebody said, hey, there's going to be violence and you got to stick together. No. It wasn't something preconceived like that.
No, nothing preconceived. This was all just hey, I've seen this happen before. I want to make sure that I don't get stabbed in this crowd of 1 million plus people. Let me bring something to protect myself. Chest protector. Wanted to show up and not get stabbed in a crowd full of people, and so based on it happened before, but never could we have imagined what was going to happen at the Capitol. That's something that was not thought of.
It wasn't talked about. Nobody had mentioned anything. There wasn't, hey, we're going to storm the Capitol or we're going to walk in there. Nothing absolutely like that.
No, absolutely not.
After Trump gave his speech that day, how would you classify or categorize his speech? Was it uplifting? I know you said there was a little bit of disappointment. Was there anything in that speech that motivated anyone, in your opinion, to storm the Capitol later on?
No.
So Ryan, I'm going to say this, and I know that I'm speaking for myself, and I'm not speaking for every Jan Sixer. I don't even claim to speak for the majority of them, but I know that there are going to be some people that will look at it both ways, and they can look at it as a way as like, hey, he didn't say anything at all, or you can look and say there may have been some remarks that people took and placed their own stories with. Me, I heard a couple of things that I'm like, oh, well, if the country was stolen and you have Trump saying fight, or you better go down there and fight for your country, you won't have a country left to fight for. Little things like that. If you think about it and you take it in an emotional standpoint in the moment, it might. Some people might have said, well, my president just told me to do this. No, he didn't. He was making remarks, just like they proved at his impeachment with the whole fight. You can say that without meaning actual violence. So he wasn't doing that, but some people might have taken it that way. And I think that's where there was a big breakdown in miscommunication. The president didn't tell us to go down there being violent and to fight police officers and congressmen. He didn't tell us that. And if we took it like that, if people took it that way, they took it the wrong way.
Well, I appreciate that and explaining that. Let me ask you this. Was there anything at any time during that speech, did he say we have to prevent the certification of the electoral votes at any time?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. That was not even thought of.
Well, that's key. That's very important. That's very important. Let me ask you, how was the security? Did you notice the security around the whole, event? Was there a lot of security? Was it minimum in your view?
as far as the Capitol perimeter goes, I was down there early that morning, 9:30, 10-ish, I'm guessing, on the west side, and we came down through the mall, and there was no police lines, no cops. I mean, there was a couple sidewalks where the guys said, yeah, no, you go down that way, but there was nothing perimeter wide anywhere at any time to tell people do not enter this area. Zero. And they tried to make a point in my my prosecutor. Well, look, see, there's a picture of these bike rack things that are off to the side in the grass. And his statement was, well, Mr. Worrell should have known not to walk down that sidewalk. Where are you coming from here? And I want to back up to what you started talking with Ryan about, because I was in that city in December, 11th and 12th weekend. And this is well-known info. They tried to use it against me. There were people getting left for dead in alleys in November during that rally up there. In December again, they were there. We have video proof. We have video evidence of Antifa getting escorted in on January 6th morning by buses by Virginia State Police. We have, in my famous picture of my arm outstretched, there's a guy all in black in a black ski mask. He fits in like a broken puzzle piece. But Antifa doesn't exist, and he wasn't there that day. I watched provocateurs tear apart fence pieces on those west steps and break it down into rods and throw it at the cops up on that second level, where they were armed with non-lethal at first, but then somebody came out with an M4. And this is who did the majority of everything that they tried to narrow down to a 30-second video clip from hours of video, and yet have no video of me of my alleged crime of assault with a dangerous weapon. And you deleted 7 hours and 26 minutes and 32 seconds of body cam footage that I had from that day. It doesn't exist for the FBI. I mean, you tell me where it's flowing, but it sure doesn't look like towards truth in this narrative that they sold the American people for 4 years.
Let me be clear. Are you saying on that particular day, it was Antifa that started this violence for a very short period of time? I want to make sure I'm understanding what you said.
There were multiple road groups, but I watched them pervasive. We had intel drop into us immediately that morning. People that were walking around on purpose and taking video. There's video of Antifa changing clothes in a set of bushes, and I'm telling this guy to delete the video evidence. No, there's video of the busloads of Antifa getting escorted in. There's the guy in my picture, and I had tons of them on video, throwing the rods up I'm following them with my phone. So there's some of that video there. Did some people have some mob mentality somewhere here and there? From some of the video I saw, yeah. But there was a corroboration of multiple people in the junk that was caused that day. I witnessed it firsthand.
Chris, are you saying that it was law enforcement that escorted Antifa into that crowd?
Not into the crowd, sir. They definitely escorted the buses into the city area where they unloaded.
And they knew it was Antifa.
I'm going to say you'd really have to be the swan, the ostrich with your head in the sand to not have known that they're unloading in black clothing, all black clothing. I mean, call it whatever you want. I'm going to call it Antifa.
Bottom line, if they didn't know it, they sure as heck should have known it. And they allowed them to come into the crowd.
That's right.
Unbelievable. And there was video, and all of a sudden that video disappeared. It's not available anymore, correct?
You can clearly see a body camera right there in the center of my chest on my stab plate vest. And I know what it recorded. I know I downloaded it to my laptop. I only spent about a few minutes going through it, but I remember I spoke of it hundreds of times on recorded jail phone calls, 72632. If I'm that good of a liar because they tried to say, oh, he's lying. There was never anything on it. If I'm that good of a liar to tell the same lie for 4 years, well, I might want a Guinness Book title or something, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, and I want to make this clear. I want to get this out. You haven't been paid anything to appear on this podcast right now, correct? You haven't been promised anything. I didn't promise you anything. None of my producers did. You're coming on your own free will. You just want to get the truth out, correct?
Amen.
That's correct.
Okay. Well, finally, we have an opportunity to do that after President Trump issued all these pardons yesterday. Let me ask you, what was was there any kind of catalyst that started the walk into the Capitol building? How did that start? How did it get to that point?
Well, on the West Steps, I can tell you, about 15 to 20 feet to my right, in front of the riot cops that were on the West Steps, was Pelosi's son-in-law, and he's clear on video, and he was pushing on those cops and trying to incite people by voice. Let's go, we got to go, and then to the left, through that big giant awning door to the left of that area, there was some antagonism in that, and then eventually it broke through. But none of that evidence was allowed to be admissible in court.
Chris, I want to stop. I want you to repeat that. What you're saying is Pelosi's son-in-law was in the crowd?
Pelosi's son-in-law, whose daughter was inside the Capitol with her HBO film crew, her husband was 15 to 20 feet to my right. I learned this all after the fact of watching videos, but he's right there on video. He's pushing on the riot-dressed police that are in between that section in the front of the West Steps, and yelling at people trying to antagonize. But, I mean, that was it. And the guys with the fences, the broken fence pieces and that, were right there in that same vicinity. The one guy that was underneath my arm in the picture, he was only 10 to 15 feet to our right.
And Pelosi's daughter, who is a producer, a film producer, just happened to be in the building with a camera.
But the public was not allowed in that day, they say.
Coincidentally. Wow. Well, people know my feelings about Nancy Pelosi. I'm not going to get into that, but believe me. So, and then did the crowd just start moving that? Well, here's another interesting thing that we found out later on, that the FBI had, I believe, 25 informants, paid informants for the FBI, were in the crowd that day. None of them got arrested. But what were they doing then?
Yes, on the 25.
I'd like to speak about that. One of my attorneys just received a call the other day from the government about a week and a half ago that they were like, we need to inform you of an informant that was in the crowd on the West Terrace beside your client, and that they've known about this entire time. We've put motions to compel this discovery from the government. The government said that these people didn't exist. Now we're finding out all of a sudden to charge a couple hundred extra people or whatever they needed to do all the way up until January 20th. They needed to also put this information out and give us disclosures as well. So we started finding out about confidential human sources that were around us in the crowd that were doing, things that were against the law or entrapping others within the crowd and getting this stuff on video. And I don't have the full information about that, but that would make at least 3, if not 4, confidential human sources in my case that we know about and have asked questions about, that the government says that they have no idea who they are or what they are, but we have evidence that says otherwise. And so this was not admitted into court. It was not allowed into court. It was shut down every single time by the government, and the judges just refused to be heard. And so it's information that, had it been allowed into court, it would have potentially changed the outcome of not just my case, but many other cases. And it was a shame that was allowed to happen to American citizens, veterans, business owners, parents, people that are outside of this, had never been in trouble before, and many people not so much as a parking ticket, and this type of abuse and coercion and manipulation was allowed to to happen to them. And so if it can happen to us, it can happen to other people as well. And that's why we want to bring light to the subject and bring the truth of what actually happened out, because we haven't been able to do that since then. This is my first time talking in 4 years, really. So I'm ready to tell that happened.
Well, Ryan, let me tell you this. There were 25 FBI informants. That's a fact. It's come out. It's a fact. They didn't all of a sudden just decide to pick up and go there one day. I mean, they were directed by the FBI, no doubt about it. I don't care what they say or they don't say. They were directed by the FBI to be in that crowd. The question is, why? What were they doing? Gathering information? Were they inciting anybody to do what they did? Because, the theory...
I know of one. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No.
One in particular, his name is Marcus D. Piola. So Marcus D. Piola was on the east side of the Capitol, and Marcus D. Piola happened to take a lot of the main video that day that was used to prosecute a lot of the Jan 6 individuals and defendants, and was used to paint a narrative online. Marcus D. Piola is the same individual that in 2018 took the video of me rescuing the dogs in North Carolina that went viral and put me on the Ellen DeGeneres show. We asked the government for Marcus D. Piola's information because I found a written statement to the FBI that was redacted in my discovery. And the information that was put on there could have only come from Marcus. And so I knew Marcus was working with the FBI, at least at that time. So we asked the government, was he working with them before then? And the government said they didn't know who this guy was. And the judge told me that I should be not bringing baseless conspiracy theories into his courtroom. And they said that I should be ashamed of myself for trying to indict a good, innocent man. Well, Marcus D. Piola, I was sent a screenshot less than a month ago. My wife was sent a screenshot of Marcus self-admitting on Twitter in 2020 that he was a confidential human source for the FBI out of the Chicago field office from the years of 2016 through 2019. And that tweet has been deleted, but it was saved by somebody on an archive.com website. And they sent it to us and said, sorry, this was withheld from you. Merry Christmas, and sent it to us on Christmas Eve. Random account, don't know who it is. And so this is exculpatory Brady information that the government had to have known about, and they withheld this. Now, this guy was used with another guy named 1% Watchdog, and we can get into that later, but they all tie into each other. They're all tied into all these conspiracies. They're all tied in with people that were there at the Capitol. They're never prosecuted, but we are. They're working with the FBI and writing statements about us. And this stuff is, we've asked about it, but it's been withheld by the government. And it's stuff that would have changed the outcome of our cases. And instead, we went to prison because the truth wasn't allowed to come out. And I just feel that needs to be changed. It needs to be fixed. You can't give me the 4 years of being away from my wife and my kids back, but I can make sure that the right thing gets done and justice happens for me, my wife, my kids, and all the other Jan 6 defendants and their families as well.
Well, I'm going to give you my thoughts on that when we finish this. But let me ask you this, Ryan. What's your background? Have you ever been in trouble before? You're a military veteran?
Yes, sir. I'm a military veteran. I served 4 years in the United States Marine Corps. I was given an honorable discharge. Since then, I've gone on to found a business with my wife, Wholesale Universe. We also founded Rescue the Universe, which is our nonprofit organization. I've rescued thousands of people, in hurricanes, tornadoes, worked directly with law enforcement. Never been in trouble, never been convicted of anything before this. And this is my first time having to go through the system. It was extremely eye-opening and life-changing. And I'll never be the same person that I was before this happened, as I'm sure everybody else is. And that's my background, though. I serve my community. I serve my country. I do it alongside other veterans and first responders. And so this is this is my first experience ever going through anything like this.
Chris, what about you? Your background?
Zero criminal history. I got some stuff that happened in the past that was adjudicated not guilty, but I've held security licenses, across multiple states across this country, no issues. Worked in repossession industry and a little bit in the bail bonds industry down here, and now all of a sudden I'm this domestic terrorist I've got no violent history at all, and it's
Let me
just
ask you this, but did either of you enter the Capitol? Did you actually go into the building?
I didn't.
Yes, sir, I did.
You were there. All right, why don't you tell me individually, whoever wants to go first, maybe you, Chris, what was the ultimate charge? How did you get arrested? What happened?
Well, I was I had tons of pictures of me on the West Steps, sedition hunters, which I believe is definitely run by the feds. They were quick to ID anybody and anybody that was open-faced. I was one of the first 150 on the West Steps. I watched how it was all peaceful and break down. And then when it broke down, it was violent. Flashbangs, these big grapefruit-sized grenades being tossed into the crowd, just indiscriminately, blowing up on people's shoulder. An old man watched it blow up on his right shoulder, tore up his face. People I knew got rid of him. I was helping an old lady that couldn't see, couldn't breathe. Tear gas cans popping. This is the craziest thing I've ever been involved in my life, for sure.
Chris, was it law enforcement that was putting in who was doing that? Do you know?
Everybody in some kind of uniform. They were guys. I've seen videos now of one guy just running around trying to get anybody in his team. Give me your flashbangs. Give me your flashbangs. And you don't have to be too smart to realize you've even been trained in these things to know you're not going to throw them directly at people. You're going to kill people. Hence the couple gentlemen that died from flashbangs that day. God rest their souls. But, and it's funny, I'm sitting in prison in the last week, and I'm watching the narrative from both sides, CNN versus Fox. And even in the last week, they sit there and say, officers died that day. Officers died that day. And I'm glad I'm a changed man in the last couple of years, because I probably would have shredded these TVs off the wall. It's angry that these people are that stupid and they're going to keep pushing this narrative of what happened, but nothing about the 4 civilians that died that day. Not a breath.
Well, you know what? They're not stupid. They're evil. Because the media that pushes a false narrative, a media that covers up for a demented president for 4 years, a media that, goes along with criminal activity that's being conducted by the administration, and there's no question about it. They're not stupid. They're evil. They're bad people. I've said this, and I'll say it again. The worst things that can happen in the United States are two things. Number one, when you weaponize the government agencies to go after your political enemies, that's number one. We've seen that happen quite a bit. And number two, as a matter of fact, you're a victim of it, both of you. And number two, when the media is complicit in covering this up and creating the narrative, that's when we lose everything. And we almost lost everything in these 4 years.
Right.
And it was God that brought this administration out, and a new administration with Donald Trump in. But let me ask you, were you arrested that same day, or were you arrested later on?
No, they came, the FBI came indiscriminately to my house January 16th. I remember this stuff. I never need to write this stuff down. It's crazy how much it's stuck in me. And when I answered the door, and people need to grasp, I'm going to deliver to you how I was greeted at my door that day, and the speed in which it mannered and what was said. And it tells you everything. So lots of red flags. So I went to the door, which I had no idea anybody was coming that way. I'm waiting for my wife to come home from an event, and she's doing the next hour. And I open the door, and it's, hi, I'm Alex Grandy. I'm with the FBI, and you're not in any trouble. And I'm on the phone with a friend of mine that I talk to every morning on speaker. And I'm looking at the speaker like he's standing next to me like, what? Because the whole you're not in any trouble thing threw up, like DEFCON 1 went into effect. that quick. And I'm like, this doesn't matter. Well, can we come in? And I walked them out. I said no. And I walked them out to my driveway next to my truck underneath my Ring camera on purpose. And we had conversations, and I hit them with, why aren't you at Antifa's house, and the whole 9 yards, and the people. And of course, they tried to butter bread and keep on moving away from the conversation. And he told me, he said, look, you're not in any trouble right now. And they left. But then they tried to embellish the way I presented my mannerisms and that day. I don't know if they were too stupid to recognize the camera that was right there in their face, 6 feet away. But then they came back March 12th. And apparently I learned, and this is what confuses me. But on March 10th, you were given an arrest and a search warrant for a domestic terrorist. But you take it to the March 12th, come and serve it. And you serve it, and you hold my wife at gun, flashbang the house property, hold her at gunpoint for multiple hours, because it was 4 hours north. I'm going on a camping trip. And I left on a Thursday the 11th, and I'm a domestic terrorist, but I wasn't surveilled, and they didn't know I packed up a truck, and Buddy did, and we were loaded with camping gear, and none of that was even known by them until that morning when they showed up. And then when I do come home, I'm in contact the whole time. Every 15 minutes, I'm talking to my wife, and so they can hear me, because they wanted me to turn myself in somewhere, and I refused. Like, politely, I asked, can I please come home and say goodbye to my wife? And I was granted in moments. They tried to embellish that I refused to follow orders. When I get there, taken into custody, of course, yes, they brought me in the house to see my wife, and then Alexander Grandy then asked me, Chris, can you open up your gun safe? But we're not here for your guns. Now, wait a minute. I'm a domestic terrorist, and I'm not going to say any of this to them, but I gladly opened it up so they didn't break it open. And I had 7 long guns in there. I had my vest I wore January 6th. They were looking for it. Apparently, they never found it, which tells me they didn't look, because 3 feet away from that gun safe was my unused ammo, and in a big ammo can was my vest all by itself. And they didn't take one single round, one single gun, nothing out of my house from a domestic terrorist. But
That's very
it doesn't
unusual.
make any sense. So that you take me, and this is the fight that I've got. You extradited me without going through the extradition process. You never asked me to waive my rights in front of a courtroom. And you damn sure didn't get my signature, which is required. And you didn't give my government signature, which is required. But you extradited me around the country for a month, flew me all over the place on Con Air, landed in D.C. April 13th. And that's really where hell began that day.
So they brought you were in Naples. They arrested you in Naples 2 months later to the federal jail, correct?
A month later, March 12th to April 13th.
Okay. And then, and I've been on that, I've been on diesel therapy myself, so I understand it, trust me. And it took you a while to get to DC, where they finally, I guess, formally charged you, correct?
Oh, I was formally charged and indicted. I went to court in front of, it's the other strange thing, apparently no lawyer said this has ever happened that they can find. But I was taken to Fort Myers and saw Judge McCoy out of the Middle District of Florida. He granted me bond. I was on an ankle monitor, literally about to walk out the door to my wife. And Chief Judge Beryl Lane Howell out of D.C. stayed this judge's order. This is where nobody can tell me or find me any previous case law where a judge from another district stayed another top judge in that district's order for bond. And that started, I was in custody from that day until November 4th or 5th. I don't know, Trish always tells me I got the wrong day, but close enough for government work.
So she revoked your bond.
Revoked it immediately. I was a danger to my community. That was their biggest thing constantly. I went to court 9 times from March 12th to November 4th. 3 of those appeals denied me for being a danger to my community.
And ultimately, what were you charged with? What were the charges? Domestic terrorism. What else?
No
That was
domestic
it.
terrorism charges. I
Okay,
got
no
the 1512, the contempt of Congress. I have the 231 civil disorder, 4 1752s, which the best way I describe is like glorified trespassing. And then I have the 111A and B, which is assault and assault with a dangerous weapon.
But there was no assault with a dangerous weapon, correct? You
Not
never
on belief.
entered. You never entered the Capitol building.
That's right. And they testified in my trial. We know I had no intention of going in.
And what was the?
Prosecution.
Now, did you have a jury trial?
I chose a bench trial in front of Lambert because the jury trial is just. I mean, I didn't see any winning in any side of it, but it went from like a half of a percentage chance with a jury to maybe like a 4% chance with a bench, and it didn't matter. I didn't lose any rights by doing it that way, and I just wanted it over with at that point.
And so you were convicted, and what was your ultimate sentence?
120 months.
And how much of that did you do?
About 25 months total. But I say I can count the near 2+ years I was at home, going through surgeries and chemo and 3 hospitalizations as a result of what the DC jail intentionally did to me.
And 120 months? That's stiff a sentence?
It was the going rate for January 6th, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Unbelievable. And so you were released just last night?
Monday night. It took them from 10:30 in the evening to notify me, hey, we're working on the paperwork. Give us some time, till about 10 minutes to 4 that morning.
Well, I'm familiar. Listen, I did 8 years in federal prison, so I know the whole routine. It's not pleasant, trust me. And well, you know, unfortunately. But I had a 10-year sentence. I mean, you guys, 120 months. You know, back when I got sentenced, it was 30 years or 35 years ago. We still had parole. So you didn't, you know, you could do, on 10, you could do 5 years and make parole. Today, you have to do 85% of it. I mean, that's a stiff sentence. Unbelievable. Yeah. Ryan, let me ask you, and I'll come back to you, Chris. What's the deal with you? What happened? You were inside the Capitol. What happened inside the Capitol? Tell me what was going on in there.
So I went in to the Capitol through a window on the left side of the tunnel. And so it explained what went inside of there. You've got to know what went on inside of that tunnel on the inauguration stage on the West Terrace. So I get to the Capitol around 3 p.m. I get on the West Terrace on the inauguration stage at 3 p.m. And I didn't realize that there had been an entire crazy tense session already there, 30, 45 minutes before we arrived. I remember walking down Constitution Avenue and smelling the pepper spray, hearing screams off in the distance and hearing explosions. I didn't know where it was coming from. And so when we got on the inauguration stage, I was up there about 10 minutes and I saw in this tunnel area, people start screaming and women were screaming and there was just a big commotion up there. And so we started hearing calls for help. We went over there to help and we hear, a woman saying, we need men up here to the front helping people. There's people yelling, Antifa, Antifa, Antifa. So we think that Antifa's up there scrapping with, elderly people. We think that the Antifa are up there scrapping with women. And I'm definitely not going to let that go down like that. So we headed right up to the front of the crowd. And it wasn't until you get to the front of the crowd and can't get back, you realize, oh, this is not Antifa. These are police up here that are beating people and spraying people and punching people. So, there was some going back and forth and trying to get out of there. And I was up there with the Officer Fanone incident. For the record, that incident didn't go down like he said it went down. Officer Fanone lied. He lied to Congress. He lied on the record, and we can prove that. People just haven't been given the chance to prove this. We can prove it with body cam. We can prove it with open source intelligence video. But I was up there for that incident. Myself and others around in the crowd actually stopped Officer Fanone from getting pushed any further into the crowd and got him sent back up to the top. So we wanted to go in the building. People in the crowd were showing their phones that people were walking in the building, that police had let them in the building. So we're like, hey, we want to go in the building too. So we started lining back up on the stairwell to go inside of the building. And it looked like we were going to be let in. There was a heave ho. And it was just like hey, push into the building. Let's get in here and protest. By the time we got back up to the front and the top of those stairs, the police were fighting with the crowd again, and that's where you have officers that are viciously assaulting women, hitting them over the top of the head with batons, punching them in the face. Officer Bagshaw tried killing Victoria White and Shane Jenkins right in front of me, and then I'm watching him try to literally kill these people, hitting them over the head with a baton, and I'm getting sprayed in the face with mace, and I just snapped into what I learned in the Marine Corps. I took an OC spray course in the Marine Corps 10 years prior to this. And so I'm like, oh, if I'm getting sprayed and deadly force is being used on me and others, what did I learn in the Marine Corps? Well, I'm going to neutralize that deadly force with the same force or less. And so I reached over, signaled for this guy to hand me a canister of OC spray. I grab it. I spray the officers that are spraying us. I spray the officer that is beating people with a collapsible asp, which is not supposed to use anyways, beating people over the head. I spray him. I spray the other officers that are spraying people. I pass the bottle off. They stop spraying. They stop punching. I say, okay, and I leave. And so I go to the left, and there is an open window, and people are saying, let's go. I'm thinking, hey, I just wanted to get in the building. Maybe I'll just go right here through this open window, and I'll get in the building, and I'll go in there and protest, and I'll be out of the way of that violence right there. So I go through the window. Short little story about that. The previous confidential human source that I was telling you about that the government called us on had to do with that window and the potential confidential human source going in before me, signaling me in, and possibly videotaping me coming through that window after he signaled me to come in. We'll get to that at a later date, though, once I find out the specifics and all of that gets uncovered. Well, we went in, and as soon as we went in, I remember I made it, but I don't want to go back out there with that violence. I don't want these cops to come in here and kill me inside of this room, because I'm starting to realize what's going on in my head. And so we take a desk and we put it underneath the door, so that way we can't be attacked or hit by these cops anymore. And people just sit in the room. And it was like in the Marine Corps, you get taught a lot of Marine Corps history. It was like a Mount Hibachi moment. I just wanted to get inside of the room. When I got in the room, I planted the flag, and that was it. I just wanted to get in and protest about a stolen election. I didn't want to go down there and fight with cops. I didn't want to see protesters get beaten. We just wanted to protest. That's it. And, I wound up leaving that room a couple of minutes later. I found out that Ashley Babbitt had been shot. At the same time that Ashley Babbitt, we're learning about that, we're hearing she's dead coming from the window. So I come outside and I look to my left, and they're doing chest compressions on Roseanne Boylan. And the officers are hitting her lifeless body with a stick. And so I'm watching a dead woman get beaten. I'm hearing, people on the phone, my father on the phone, say they shot another woman inside. I knew what I had just seen in the tunnel, which is officers relentlessly try to kill people with batons, with their fists. And, I just lashed out verbally. Somebody put a microphone in my face, and I just went to town on that microphone. And definitely shouldn't have done that. Shouldn't have said some of the things that I said. But with what I was seeing in that moment, I never thought I would see something like that. So I wound up getting arrested 12 days later. We got out of there. I left at 4:44 p.m. that day off the Capitol grounds. As soon as I started hearing President Trump tweet out, say, going home, and that there was going to be a curfew. I've worked natural disaster areas. I know what a curfew means with National Guard. So we left. We're like, we're out of here. And got back to the hotel room and saw that I started watching the news and seeing social media, and I started seeing pictures of us and video of us, along with words like insurrection and terrorists. And I was like, oh man, we're in trouble. We're in bad trouble right now. And Alex and I both agreed that it was time to get out of there and go back home. So we left the next morning, hauled butt back to Texas. And, that's when I started noticing all of the black vans show up in the neighborhood, cars that aren't supposed to be there. We're in a gated community. There's a black van. You don't belong here. I knew that we were being watched. And on January 18th, 2021, they kicked in my door, flashbanged my house. Thankfully, I wasn't there. I was in Oklahoma at my in-laws' house, celebrating the holiday weekend. And when I found out that they were at my house, we called down there. I got a hold of an attorney. He was like, "Don't tell him anything. Just come down here and turn yourself in." And so I did. I drove back down and turned myself in that day, and I was charged with assault with a deadly or dangerous weapon, conspiracy to overthrow the government, conspiracy to stop the electoral count, which, this stuff was later thrown out by the Supreme Court. And when we started putting in motions to compel discovery about the confidential human sources in my case, the assault charge was then dropped way down low to such a sweetheart deal at 63 months that I couldn't say no to it, because I knew that I would go to trial. They told me, "Hey, you better take this deal. Stop asking about confidential human sources, and or we'll take you to trial and convict you, win, and get 10 to 15 years out of you." So I took a deal at 5 years, knowing that I had a wife and two little children to come back home to, and I cut my losses.
Well, unfortunately, that's how the government bullies you into taking a plea. I get that, but let me. And it's terrible. I want to make this really clear again to both of you, or from both of you. There was never, or was there ever, a thought in your mind to enter the Capitol building in an insurrection to somehow stop the certification of the new electoral? There was never a thought in your mind.
We didn't know that was possible.
You didn't even know.
We already thought that, it had been done. The votes had been counted. We knew that there was going to be objections that were heard, but we didn't know that that was possible to go in there and stop something like that. So no, absolutely not.
And Trump, during his speech, did he ever say we got to stop them from certifying the vote, certifying the?
No,
never stated. 100% sure he never said anything like that.
Right. No.
So what it sounds like, Ryan, this thing got so out of hand. I'm thinking two things now. We know for a fact that Trump did request the National Guard to be there. That request was denied either by Pelosi or by the mayor at that time of Washington, D.C. And I think what you said, Chris, you didn't notice any. There was a large crowd, correct? There was a big crowd there that day.
From the numbers I've heard, 2.2 to 2.5 million in the city that day.
Okay, so
you want to throw this 200,000 number out there to try to diminish it.
Okay, so huge crowd, but you didn't notice any additional security or say, "Wow, this place is so secure. Wow, there's cops everywhere. Wow, there's a military, the National Guard." You didn't notice any
of that. When I got
that.
down to the Capitol, there was nothing stopping us from getting up to the Capitol. There was no fencing, no cops, no loudspeakers saying that you can't be up here. You didn't know you couldn't be up there because everybody was already up there because there was no fencing. So had there been fencing and signs saying, "Hey, this is a restricted area," or any type of law enforcement there at all saying, "Hey, you can't go in here," I'm not going on the Capitol grounds. Like, I know better than that. So there was none of that.
And Ryan brings up a point that enlightens me, because I was up there before and I was already off when he's saying he came. And we talked about this for the 8 months we lived together. And then a couple here this last year and a half during my sentencing. Look, these people are coming up to where I was in a war zone, minus real bullets. And he's coming up there after I've already gone and telling you there's no police presence. There's nothing to be seen here. Yeah, was there probably some things on the ground to say there were some people here? Yeah, but so there was this insurrection that, according to my belief, the term insurrection requires weapons, but you had no weapons except by the police. And I'm going to say this, and many of us that were up on that front line, and I was there when that line of Capitol Police, riot police came up there to secure that center section. They did not, and I wouldn't be surprised for 1 second if they come out with the evidence showing that these were not cops, because they had no identifying marks on any of those uniforms for those riot cops. And all the helmets that I witnessed on all the other cops were nice and shiny, and their name was on the back, and it was pretty looking. But yet this whole front line of riot cops that I was near, the best you could tell they were Capitol Police if they turned their head slightly. On the back of the helmet, you saw some scratched up lettering. They clearly pulled this equipment out of the training boxes that they probably have down the training grounds with cobwebs on it and threw it on a bunch of guys. And I'm saying, I'm even doubting they were cops, because they walked within 1 foot of me, and I videoed them on my phone, which that video got erased. And the looks in these guys' eyes was of fear, but none of them were my size. And I'm 6'3", 250, 260 then, but they were small little men. And this is who you're putting on your front line? It just didn't make sense.
Doesn't make sense.
Let me ask. I noticed that as well. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, let me ask you this, because we saw obviously there was a lot of footage of people walking peacefully through the Capitol. Peacefully.
That's right.
There was no issue.
Let in. Hand gestures. Come on in.
They let him in. At any point in time, was there a line of police in front of the Capitol building saying you can't enter here?
No.
Did you ever notice that? Or were they inviting people in?
When I came off the West Steps to decompress and try to get some oxygen and clear my eyes from all the ridiculousness I went through, I walked around that side, up around to the east side of the building just to see what was going on. And there was none of it. So I saw the whole west, the north, and the east side of that building. And there was nothing to tell you anything about you don't belong here. And I was within feet of cops, taking pictures with a flag in my hand, and they were right behind me, and nobody said a word about anything.
So you could only surmise here. I mean, listen, I know it's after the fact, but from what you're telling us, it just sounds like not only were they unprepared when they should have been prepared. If they knew 2.5 million people were coming into town, it's just common sense. You have enough security there. Anything can go wrong. Innocently, anything can go wrong. Fights can break out, whatever. You got to have proper security. And the fact that they were denied, that Trump was denied the security that he requested, something is terribly wrong here. I think we know that, but I'm just bringing it up for my viewers. Something is terribly wrong here based upon what you're telling me. You would think that they would have a line of security in front of the Capitol building. Hey, you can't enter here. Can't come in here. They didn't do any of that.
Isn't it awful coincidental that cell phones were dead until, I don't know, 3:30-ish, around that area. And then all of a sudden, this emergency alert goes off on hundreds of thousands of phones around us. It was in concert. And there's a curfew alert put out by Muriel Bowser. And then, I guess, what I'm told, because I was back in the hotel by 4:30, I think, at the latest, the National Guard shows up to enforce a security for a curfew. And while President Trump asked for it, it's ultimately over the mayor and the Speaker of the House to get it done. They denied it days in advance. And for them to say they didn't know January 6th was going to happen, we could probably get into this later, but we know, I think Ryan will agree with me on this, that we were told about certain things that occurred even in that jail well before January 6th in the election in preparation for January 6th, but they didn't know it was going to happen. but you got money and allocation signed for, and things are occurring. And from what I read, best, Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe in September of 20 is when the preparation started in that building we lived in.
I heard it was December of 2020, and it had to deal with the CARES Act. And apparently, somehow, somewhere within the CARES Act, there was money allotted to the DC jail for protesters or counter protesters after the inauguration of 2021. And so the officer that was telling us this, very credible person that we dealt with, was told us that in December 2021, they started cleaning out C2A and C2B and changing stuff around in preparation for rioters or counter protesters on January 6th and 20th of 2021.
You heard that was being talked about in December prior to the January date. And
that is correct.
Yeah, the CARES Act was, as a result of COVID. We understand that. But that was being talked about to make room for people in the jail because they were going to lock more people up?
Correct, because they were going to have an entire wing. The Jan 6 defendants, we were all inside of a pod together. When we first got there, there were two pods back to back. There's a lot of people that came in. We watched dozens and dozens and dozens of people come in and then get bonded out or come in and get transferred somewhere else. There was a core group of guys that were there, for a couple of years, and those 20 to 40, there's a core group of them, but there were dozens of other people, Jan 6 defendants that came in and got bonded out or came in and left very quickly. And they knew that there was going to be an influx of people. And so we were told this not just by one officer, but by multiple different officers at different times that I don't believe would have spoken to each other and corroborated a story like this, And so it's something that when you heard it, you're like, okay, yeah, that's something that actually happened.
Well, you'd be surprised what you get out of those COs in there when they talk. Believe me, I know I have experience on that also. Yes. Gentlemen, this is, I feel for you. Believe me, having been through this system and growing up I visited my dad for 25 years in prison. So I know the system intimately well. Everything that you're saying to me makes perfect sense. I don't see anything out of line whatsoever. And it's just terrible what they've done here. It really is. It's horrible. And thank God for President Trump. Everybody was talking about the pardons yesterday and how can Trump do this? Well, I said, you know what? I said, what people don't understand is Trump campaigned on this. He said he was going to pardon everybody. And you people are just not used to a president doing what he said he was going to do.
That's right.
He campaigned on this. And, the greater part of America, people like yourselves, saw through all this nonsense in the past several years and voted for Trump for that very reason. So, listen, I got to tell you my feeling on this. Everybody's talking again on the left, there's going to be revenge and he's going to target his political enemies and all that kind of stuff. To me, it's not revenge. This is all about justice. This is all about accountability. You cannot have our government going after innocent people, possibly staging this whole thing. And I put nothing past the left after what I've seen in the past 4 years, what I've witnessed in my life. God forbid if something like this happened and we are not holding those responsible accountable, it's horrible. They need to be held accountable. The American people need to know what you went through. They need to know that people actually do this, and they need to know that there is people looking to stop it all. And I pray, and look, I've been encouraging people that I know that are around the president, you got to follow this up. You can't let this go. These people went to jail for no reason. They're innocent people. They were set up, many of them. I believe that as I'm sitting here today, and this has to be pursued. And I don't know what plan you might have, maybe civilly. I don't know if there's any litigation that can be formed. Hopefully, if they do find out that there was really some bad stuff that went on here, and you have some relief, you can never get back the time you were away. I get it. But it's a shame what they've done to you. I really mean that. And, thank God that it ended, at least that part of it ended on Monday for you both.
Well,
and
if I could say something.
Yeah, sure. Please.
I'll say this. Look, every one of us, we went through things. Every January 6er went through things they never in their life dreamed that would ever happen. Some went through, and I thank God for this for them, that they didn't go through near what people like me and Ryan went through in this. But I'll say this, the truth is coming. These people did treasonous acts.
Mm-hmm.
Treason has very specific definitions, and they chose me. So they're going to get their choice, and they're not going to like it, because they're going to have to bury me to shut me up at this point. And I
Well,
mean
Chris,
that.
I commend you for that. You know, we got to have principle in this life. And what they did to you deserves a strong response. It really does.
Well,
Let me tell you,
to
if
give
there's
you an idea what drives my passion in this, Ryan's a blessed man. His wife and kids didn't bail on him. But my father, a Republican, has turned on me and the whole family and driven a wedge between me, my son was then 15, who's now 19, and driven a wedge there. And many of us lost family members, friends. There's no competition in this for sure. But we've all lost a lot. And for me to sit here and allow them to have done what they did to me and not do something, and what I've witnessed in this Bureau of Prisons.
Chris, they tried killing you. Look, they tried killing you. Now, the stuff that I saw them do to you inside of there, they threatened your life. They, took you to places that you shouldn't have been, made you miss medical appointments. Chris, you have cancer, and I don't mean to like put your, public information, but you're missing. Look at you.
I got nothing. I'm wide
you're missing
open.
half your jaw. Like this man has cancer that is eating his body up. The judge knows this, and the judge is going to send him to prison for 10 years. That was a death sentence. They sent him to prison to die. And he has been pardoned of these crimes because he's innocent of these crimes. And so this is not just a retribution and justice type thing. These people tried for better. They tried messing our lives off. Like they tried killing us and like me, like they sent me down to Beaumont Medium, and it's not the pen, but that place is rocking down there, wide open. And I felt like they sent me there to harm me, for better lack of words, and because I watched what happened to people on that compound, and I made it out of there alive or without any holes inside of me. And I thank God for that. And then they sent me next door to the low, and I think, well, this place would be better. That place is crazier than the medium in many ways. And so I'm just like, I don't understand this. But
that jail's nickname is Bloody Beaumont, and I never went near Texas, and it's known internationally.
So thankful for President Trump, because he saved people's lives in this process. I don't like going out there and campaigning on something like pressing an issue like, well, if you don't do this, people are going to die. If he didn't do this, people at some point, somebody was going to get stabbed and killed because they didn't belong. They didn't know prison politics. They didn't know how to just, move here, move there. I fortunately learned it very quickly and learned how to shuck and jive, but I was not the best at it, and I didn't like having to play convict, and I was ready to come home to my wife and kids and get back in the environment that I love. I know a lot of people felt the way that I did, and Worrell, I'm glad that you were able to get out of there, because if not, they were going to kill you over there at Butner. Okay, it's supposed to be a medical facility, but more people leave there in a body bag than get the help that they need. So I'm glad you got out.
And let me expound on that for a moment, if I can, please. Look, they sent me from September 23rd to May 3rd. They put me on diesel therapy. I went on a 7-month tour of 12 stops. 5 of those stops back to the same 2 places, Tallahassee and Miami, which is nowhere near Butner. Then and I think I give a certain person credit from my congressman's office. Is a diehard January 6th supporter. And if it wasn't for her behind the scenes calling marshals, they finally showed up on May 3rd and took me out of Tallahassee and flew me direct to Butner. And lo and behold, I thought, great, I'm going to get something here. Finally, No, let me tell you. Smoke and mirrors doesn't even begin to explain it. I watch them walk over dead bodies there. I watched a nurse come in and they Narcan this guy. I'm on the 4th floor, the cancer floor in Butner. They Narcaned him because he blacked out. He was having trouble with chemo. He passed out on the floor, smashed his head in his mouth, was bleeding, potentially bleeding interior. What do? They run up and Narcan him. 3 days later, 4 days later, I don't remember, he's dead. They take his cellie, lock him down for 100 and something days during this BS investigation, keep him locked up. There's no treatment in the Bureau of Prisons. They say that they're accredited. I have a letter from Joint Commission showing they lost their accreditation. There's a lot of evidence showing they lost it and can never get it back. It was lost years ago. The Ambulatory Association won't give them accreditation. Then after 6 months, I was 1 week short of 6 months at the FMC. I had 2 jobs in that place. I was a PM cook and I worked on suicide watch there's a huge psychology department in Butner. There's the level of where they kind of live almost like the rest of the prisoners. Then there's 1E and everybody's locked down 24/7. And I got accepted and chosen to be on this prestigious BOP job. It turned out it wasn't so prestigious if you look at it on paper. With these suicide guys. And there is no treatment. None. And the medical world is complicit. And we are watching these guys, that this guy with a beard about as much as Ryan has right now, and he calls himself Chloe, and we had to keep a log, and the doctors would come in and keep a log, and I refused to write down she, or even no way, but they're just writing in the book, well, she needed this, she needed that, and I'm like, did you take a biology class to get your MD license? I know maybe you're not an MD, but you're a doctor of psychology. What school did you go to? And it's for money.
Yeah, let me tell you this. I can tell you more horror stories that came out of Springfield, the alleged, medical facility there. It's been there for a long time. You're 100% right. And, they put me on diesel therapy for like 8 months. I was going from one prison to another, the whole bit. But, a quick story. When I was being released, I had to go to the doctor. You got to get an AIDS test, right, before they release you. Crazy. So after 8 years, I go there. I had never been sick. Praise God for that. Never asked them for as much as an aspirin, right? So I go in on a Friday. I'm being released on Monday. I get in. The doctor looks at me. He says, "What do you want?" I said, "Hey, I ain't here to bother you. I don't want to see you. I don't want to know you. Give me the damn test. I'm leaving on Monday. Or don't give me the test. Just write me up and let me get the hell out of here." I told him just like that. As soon as I said that, he said, "Oh, okay." He thought maybe I was sick and he had to get off his ass and do something, But as soon as he heard that, he said, "Oh, okay." Then he got nice. I said, "Write it up. Don't give me, I don't have AIDS. Do whatever the hell you want to do and let me get out of here." So believe me, I know exactly what you're talking about. But guys, look, I don't want to keep you much longer. I can tell you this. You have a supporter here. I have a big voice. I understand the system. I totally support, what you're telling me now. None of this is foreign to me. None of this is a stretch. And believe me, I'm going to let people know about it. Now that I've heard it firsthand from you both, I really appreciate you coming on. And anything that I can do, and you let your attorney know that too, anything that I can do by way of supporting you in any way, I'm willing to do. And that goes for all of you that have been just so mistreated. And, I thank God for Trump coming in here and wanting to clean house. I really mean it. And, you're hearing this, I was a criminal for 20 years. I don't know if you know my background. I was, part of one of the families in New York. I was a captain in a Colombo family. My dad was the underboss. My dad got a 50-year prison sentence. And I will tell you this, gentlemen, my father and I did stuff on the street, no doubt about it. I did 10 years and whatever. The particular crime that my father was indicted for and did 40 years on that 50, he was innocent. And I would stake my life on it. I'll take it to my grave. I investigated that case thoroughly. My father did 40 years for a crime he didn't commit. So I understand the system. I understand what they can do to you. and I'm totally supportive of you. So I want to thank you both. I really mean that. Maybe we'll do this again if I have some more things that we want to talk about. And as you proceed along with this, if there's anything that I can do to get the word out for you, to help you out, I'm willing to do.
Yes, sir.
I guess the only thing I'd ask of you, sir, is
What's that?
my mission right now is to expose the abhorrent inhumanity in these prisons and jails and have that corrected. And I need your help.
Well, I will do that. And now we have somebody in office and people in office that maybe will support us also. So why don't your lawyer has all my contact information. Get in touch with me and we'll take the next step. Whatever I can do, I promise you I'll help because I believe in it. No question.
Thank you.
All right,
sir.
gentlemen.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And that's what I wanted to tell you. Thank you as well. You know, it's an honor to come on here. When Joe reached out to me, it's our attorney and, my attorney who just went to bat for me when it wasn't the cool thing to do at all. He came and rescued me. I'm used to rescuing folks. I'm like, who's going to rescue me during this time? And Joseph McBride came and did that. So I'm thankful for him. I'm thankful for what he's done before then, for my family, for my wife, for my kids, and what he's doing now afterwards, helping us get this truth out because I didn't get to tell my story. And I want to tell my story. I know Chris wants to tell his story, and it deserves to get told because the American people deserve to know what actually happened before, during, and after January 6th. And it's our duty to tell, and that's what we're going to do.
I hope this opens up the door, for you to be able to get out there because people need to hear this. And I'm gonna do the same. I'm going to be speaking with Joe on Monday, so we'll follow this up even further. And we've got some resources on our side too to help this along, and we'll jump in on that. So again, gentlemen, thank you very much. God bless you both. And Ryan, thanks for your service. I've been very supportive of our veterans throughout the years and our first responders. I believe it. I want to say one thing. I don't know if this is true or not, but these cops that day, they might have been set up too. Who knows what they were told.
I agree with you on that.
Yeah,
I do agree with you. We have video of them saying, we have video body cam evidence of officers up there saying, I think we've been set up. And so I don't disagree with you on that. I think that they are just as confused and hurt about that day as us. And so I do believe that a lot of their upset and anger towards us, it is justified because they were entrapped by somebody too. And so I get it.
I believe that the wool was pulled over their eyes. They were probably told, hey, you're going to have trouble here. Be prepared. These are bad people. Who knows what they put in their head? And it goes right up with everything else that happened here.
There's a video out there of a Metro cop walking up on the steps to talk to Capitol Police and get a water. You can't see his face, but you see his body cam. He zips open his jacket. His badge is hanging there on his neck. And he says we're undercover as Antifa in the crowd. So you set up your fellow brothers that were going to be on the streets with you, potentially be in a two-way shooting situation and help defend you in a situation, and you are running the bus over them?
I don't doubt it.
I have no word.
Well, listen, this obviously is very, very meaningful to Trump. I don't think he's going to let it go. I think, his new people, Kash Patel and Bondi, they're going to investigate this further. They absolutely should. There's so many things that they need to investigate that went wrong in this past 4 years, from Biden right on down. And I think we're going to see some action here. He's got the right people in place. They're not afraid. They're not intimidated. And they're going to go for it. And again, don't let anybody tell you this is retribution, gentlemen. This is accountability and justice. That's what it is. The American people,
our country.
Yes, the American people need to be made aware so that this never happens again. God bless you both. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate the opportunity.
Chris will be in touch. Thank you both.
Yes, sir.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. My friends, all I can say is, wow. I got to tell you what stands out to me right now. I have to tell you this. Nancy Pelosi's son-in-law was in the crowd, rousing people up. Nancy Pelosi's daughter, who is a producer, film producer, just happened to be in the Capitol with her camera taking pictures? Does that sound suspicious to you? What was he doing there? This was a Trump rally. They're certainly not there for Trump. What was she doing there? What was she prepared for? I think that question needs to be answered. And I want to say this. The police, there's no right at any point in time to go after the police and look to do any physical damage to them. But you know what? These police may not even know what was going on. Who knows what they were told? Maybe they were told by the mayor and by the people that, hey, there's going to be a violent protest here. Be prepared. We don't know what they were told, so maybe they were innocent in what they did, according to what Ryan described, that he saw the police throwing tear gas and doing all of this. Let me ask you another question. The 25 FBI informants that were in the crowd, what were they doing there? If I remember correctly, Ryan said one of them had a camera, and he knew who he was. What was he doing there with a camera? Why were they there to begin with? And none of them got arrested, not one of them. Is it possible that they set up this whole thing in order to frame Donald Trump, to get rid of him once and for all? I mean, he got indicted for it afterwards. Remember that? Supreme Court threw it out, but he did get indicted for it. Remember what they said? I asked them very specifically, was there anything in Trump's speech that you deemed was indicating that they should storm the Capitol building? They both said no, both of them. Are they telling the truth? That's up for you to decide. I'm not going to challenge them. This is what they said. You heard what these two men said. You heard how upset they were. Both of them never had a record in the past. They were clean. One of them, a Marine veteran. You heard what he did. He's a good person. He's a patriot. The other person, cancer. What they did with, I know what they do in the Bureau of Prisons. Nobody had to tell me that. Got enough experience with that. Half my life, more than half my life. So I got to tell you this, people, and I'm saying this. There should be an investigation on this. Absolutely. You cannot allow innocent people to get their lives destroyed for political reasons. And you know what? Look, if anybody here, I don't care if you like Trump or not, it's immaterial. If anybody here cannot realize what the Democrats have done in this Biden administration, then there's something wrong with you. You're delusional. Because it absolutely happened. Lawfare absolutely happened. They went after their political enemies. Absolutely. The press covered for them. Absolutely. They lied. Absolutely. They lied about Biden for 4 years, without a doubt. You see what they did. Forget Donald Trump for a minute. You cannot put anything past these people. We need an investigation. There has to be an investigation. We got to get to the bottom of this. Why? It's not revenge. It's justice. This can never happen again, people. If innocent people went to jail because one political party tried to set up the other, then this has got to stop. I 100% am for a full investigation. Let the chips fall where they may. An honest investigation. Chips need to fall where they may. After I heard this, I'm really upset about it. I'm more upset about it. I've never heard any one of these people speak before. It's the first time we're hearing it. We need an investigation. Hopefully we'll shed some light on this thing. Hopefully Trump will follow through, or his Justice Department, whatever. We absolutely need an investigation into all of this skullduggery that was done throughout Biden-Harris administration. That's it for today, people. I can go on and on and on, but I'm going to leave it at that. How do I always leave you? Same way. Be safe. Be safe, please. Be healthy. And yes, God bless you, all of those people that you love, our neighborhoods, our communities. God bless our leadership, and God bless America. See you next time.